Welcome to both of you. I read recently, Marc, that you had monks staying in one of your homes.
Yes.
What's up with that?
That's true. That's true.
Why?
Why do I have monks staying in my
Yes.
home?
Well, excuse me. I'll ask the question in a slightly more pointed way. Why do
This
you
is
have,
a long answer,
Yeah.
so we only have like 30 minutes. For this, so.
why do you have monks in your home, and what does this have to do with running Salesforce.com?
I have a relationship with a mindfulness teacher who is actually very well known, and he actually came a couple years ago here to San Francisco and did a meditation training program with about 24 very well-known CEOs in my home. And then last November, he was in France, where he lives, and he had a stroke. And when I was paying attention to what was going on with his recovery, they just didn't have the resources that we have here at the University of California, San Francisco. We're very lucky to have a great stroke rehabilitation team. So we've brought him here, and he's here with his top 30 monastics, and they've moved in. So it's great. I actually spent this morning, David Agus, who was on the panel yesterday with Craig Venter, and I, at 6 o'clock this morning, we're with them doing meditation. It's a good way to start the day, actually. Get you very clear and locked and loaded.
My favorite part of the anecdote is that Marc has them all using Uber in San Francisco.
That's true. Well, they don't have money, which is, so they have to, Uber's great for them, actually.
Okay, now...
And all the other things we have, Instacart. Actually, it's a perfect environment to be a monk in San Francisco. Everything's on demand. You don't have to carry money. You don't need a bank account. Life is good.
Now, Marissa, I started with Marc and his monks and mindfulness, partly because I thought it might be entertaining, but also because I'd like us...
Thank you, Adam, for that also.
You're welcome. I'd like us to have a conversation for, primarily or importantly for our visitors in the room, people who are new to this strange land here that we call Silicon Valley in San Francisco, and talk a little bit about what makes this place different. You worked at Google for a long time. You're at Yahoo now. We have CEOs who have monks in their homes talking about mindfulness. What is it that's going on here that might be different for a visitor?
Well, I think that there's certainly talented people everywhere, but I do think one of the things that's happened here is that there's just a critical mass of people who want to take technology and try and change the world and make it a better place. And they come together to do all kinds of different interesting experiments. Some of them work, some of them don't. But it's that fact that there's just so many connections that can be formed between all these different talented people in interesting ways that just causes a lot of fun concepts to get explored and companies to get started.
Take a moment and explain to everybody the task in front of you at Yahoo. What you confronted when you arrived, which is what, 2 years ago?
3.
3 years ago, excuse me. And what's on your plate right now?
Sure. Well, Yahoo now is 20 years old. And obviously there was a point when it was synonymous with the internet. It really was the internet for a lot of people. There's a lot of fierce competition in that arena. And it went through a bunch of years that were really turbulent. To the point where sometimes you just don't even like to give voice to it. But I was actually the 7th CEO in 61 months. So a lot of turbulence overall at the company. And a lot of departures, a lot of attrition. And really a loss of vision and where the industry was going and where we could provide a lot of value. And so what we've done over the past 3 years is really trying to figure out how do we return this iconic company, this once iconic company, back to greatness. And we have a lot of amazing assets in the form of people and properties. And how do we take those and really translate them to mobile, to video, to the social arenas, and make them more modern and more relevant to our end users.
And where are you on that journey right now?
Well, there's still more to do. There will always be more to do. But one of the things I'm really proud of is that we have built a future. When I arrived at Yahoo, most of our revenue streams, in fact, almost all of them were in decline. And it is daunting to take a $5 billion revenue base, all of which is composed of probably about 10 or 12 different product lines, all of which are declining, and say, okay, how do we build ourselves a future? And so we set our sights on mobile. When you look at what Yahoo's good at, mail, news, sports scores, sharing photos, group communications, search. Those are all things that people use on the phone. And it was really a matter of putting together that vision around mobile and trying to build a meaningful and material future. And the question was, could we build that base to be large enough and meaningful enough, fast enough, that we could actually grow while these other streams of revenue, these legacy streams, decline?
One of the great debates for a handful of years about Yahoo has been, is it a media company or is it a technology company? You've said you're not confused about that. What is it?
Well, I mean, I think that my view is that it was kind of a parlor game or a Silicon Valley version of navel gazing. Because I just think it's not a meaningful question. If you look today, there's a lot of media companies, all of which have large technology components. Almost all tech companies now have a large element of a media component. And I actually think that for us it's an asset because we're a very large we are a company that really understands and is deeply rooted in technology. So if I had to pick, I would pick a technology company. But we really do understand media at our core, and we're a large, we have a large media presence that really understands tech. And so it allows us to do things like on Sunday, October 25th, so about 7 or 8 days ago, we did the first live stream, global live stream for the NFL. We took a Sunday morning game and streamed it to 34 million views and 15 million viewers worldwide. And when the NFL looked for a partner to go digital with and do this kind of live streaming, we were an obvious fit because we have both the technology and the scale, but also an understanding of how to do that type of media well.
Marc, can you take a moment and remind the audience what Salesforce.com's products are? You started with one thing.
Oh, what a pleasure that would be. Thank you.
I'll twist your arm.
I'll kind of, I think every company in our industry today is actually no longer really a technology company. So I don't think it's a fair question to Marissa, saying, what are you? I think that I said this yesterday and I really believe it, we had this really interesting juxtaposition in this opening panel with Ginny Rometty and John Stumpf. And I think what John anchored to is what I'm getting pulled to more and more. This certainly has not been true my whole career, which is that you have to find in your core, in your company, who you really are. Which one of our customers is not becoming a technology company? We just had a lunch and I was sitting with the CEOs of Monsanto and Citigroup and all these great Flextronics, all these great organizations. And look, they all are technology companies. What company is not a technology company? But it's then, what is your unique position in the world? And for us, what we see happening is a number of really important things, but perhaps the most important thing is that for every one of those companies, including Marissa's, we're all learning how do we connect with our customers in a whole new way. We're working to build these one-on-one relationships with our customer. Peter from XPRIZE was kind of talking about this incredible new platform that exists, with the 6-7 billion smartphones and interconnected and the Internet of Things, right? We've talked about that here in the conference. But behind all of these devices and phones and videos and everything you're doing, don't forget is your customer. And I think that's also Ram Charan's point, right? Which is that for the most successful CEOs and the most successful companies in the world, they have a unique customer centricity that they get reminded of each and every moment. And that if you can connect deeply with those customers today, that's the remarkable opportunity for growth in your organization. And that's what Salesforce does. That's our sole mission.
But forgive me if this is a sharp-edged question, but you sell a product that helps companies connect with their customers. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And your unified field vision of the world also happens to be what you're selling, yes?
Well, thank you for bringing that to my attention, Adam.
But you're doing that through...
It also happens to be reality, which is nice.
But you're doing it through... It's interesting that you want to suggest, that's not about technology per se, but your vision 16 years ago that software would be on a distributed public network called the cloud, that was a technology...
What is this cloud that you're talking about?
You've invested a lot of money in explaining to people what this thing is.
Okay, so it's kind of like this, which is that we have these huge mega trends in the tech industry, which is, we've been on point from the beginning with Salesforce now almost 17 years. Number one, we have this huge transformation that's going on to cloud computing, and to that point, I would just say, what company is not moving to that model? What company is not a cloud company? Yours. Every single one of these companies are moving to, even we're talking to the CEO of Monsanto, we're talking about science as a service. We're talking about how do we provide, greater relationships between his company and his customers, which are these farmers. He's selling these incredible agriculture products like these seeds. He wants to have a more one-to-one relationship with the customer. He wants to be in constant communication with them through the phone. He wants to have drones that are able to survey the fields. That's a huge part of the future of agriculture, so they have real-time response to problems that are going on for yield management, and he wants to move from a capital model to an OpEx model. And that's not completely, his vision. It's more my kind of putting words in his mouth, but that's the vision of a lot of companies. A lot of companies are moving from capital companies to service models. They're going to look more like my company. They're focused on the cloud. They're focused on collaborative models, which we call social, is kind of the word in our industry. They're focused on mobility and how do you run your business from your phone. That's a huge part of the model. Millennials are not coming in to these big companies to get their laptops. They want their phones, and they want to have their apps on their phones and run their businesses from their phones. And then we have these incredible new trends that are going on. We heard about data science and analytics. Certainly that's a huge thing, the emergence of artificial intelligence. And then you have Internet of Things. And these are the 5 big technology megatrends that get repeated over and over again ad nauseum through this conference and every other conference that I go to. That's all table stakes. If that's all you're focused on is building the best cloud, social, mobile, data science, cognitive, whatever, and IoT platform, that's not enough. Because ultimately what it takes today is how can you work with your customer, your company, and how do you then find your unique value in that technology platform?
So I want to turn from the customer and from the technology to the company, to each of your companies, and talk about leadership, and ask you each to talk about how you conceive of your role as the leader. And I think, Marissa, early in your tenure at Yahoo, you did some interesting and controversial things. You wanted people to come into the office more. You wanted to change the logo. And I'd like to know, at a high level, how you think about leadership. And then how you think about, were some of these things intentional as signals of what your leadership would be? Or are we reading too much into them and they were just policy things you wanted to do?
Well, I think that I think about leadership as listening. It was interesting, I've been lucky to have a lot of great mentors over my career, and one of them is Eric Schmidt. And Eric said this thing once where he was like, good executives confuse themselves when they convince themselves that they actually do things. He was like, when was the last time you designed a web page or wrote a line of code or designed anything? He was like, your job as an executive is to listen to the team, to set a vision, listen to the team, and then get things out of the way so they can run at that vision as fast as they can. And so, that was really my approach, especially coming into Yahoo after such a turbulent period, was to get in, really spend time talking to people. And so, I went down, sat in the cafeteria, for like an hour or two every day for about my first month there, just listening to people. I'm actually quite shy, so it was a challenge for me, but letting people just come up, anyone who'd come and talk to me.
Marc's very shy too. He understands that.
And just striking up conversations and getting a lot of insights into, one, where people thought the company should go, and then two, also what was getting in their way. And so there were things, for example, like the work from home, which I hope it's not my legacy, but it definitely got more of an external response than it even did internally. But there were definitely people who said, hey, it feels like this is our chance. It feels like this is a moment where we could really reinvent the company. And one of the issues that we have is, every week we have to stop, all the productive work we're doing and call this person who didn't come into the office. And actually, I had less of an issue with people who have really good working from home setups. A lot of times when people work from home formally, it works really well. My brother works from home. I have nothing against working from home per se. But we did have a lot of people who were just okay, traffic's bad today, the rain is bad, waiting for the cable guy, like I'll just work from home. And I think we all know that in that setting, you don't necessarily have the most productive day. And there were a lot of teams who brought to my attention, like, this is getting in the way, can you say something to the company that says, let's all try and be in the office more. And so that was really a response to a request from the different people who were working really hard on some of these key products.
But you were very aware. You were aware of two things by doing that. One, that it was going to be controversial, and two, that you were leading, correct?
Not really, as I said. I don't know that necessarily it's the right stance, certainly for the industry or the world at large, but it was the right thing for Yahoo at that moment. So we weren't trying to make a broader commentary on working styles or working from home. We were just saying, look, people are more collaborative, they're more inventive when they get to come together. We were really proud of the time. Around that same time, we released our Yahoo weather app, which took Flickr photos and put it up against weather information. So, if it's raining in Tokyo and you go to Tokyo, you actually see a picture that it was posted on Flickr of Tokyo in the rain. And so it's really nice. But those things don't come together unless someone from Flickr runs into someone from weather, like in the hallway or in the cafeteria, and has that conversation. And so it was the right thing for us at that moment.
Marc, you're one of the key elements of your leadership style is that, and I teased you about not being shy, but you are very clear about what your values are and what you want the values of Salesforce.com to be. And I say that because they are distinct, right? They're not like other companies necessarily. They're opinionated in a very strong way. And so can you share what those are, and also what gave you the thought that it was okay to do that? It's not the way all CEOs behave, right?
Yeah, I would say that, there's basically two parts to that question. And the first part, our core values in our company start with trust. We heard about that yesterday, but for us, no one does business with us if they don't trust us. And trust of our customer, that's number one for us. That is, it starts on a platform of trust, a culture of trust, and then it moves to customer success and growth. That becomes paramount for us, and then we have innovation. And those things have been critical to us. We've also become very well known that on the first day that we've started Salesforce, we took 1% of our equity, 1% of our profit, 1% of all of our employees' time, which has turned into running 25,000 nonprofits and NGOs for free on our service. We've given away more than $100 million in grants. We've done more than 1.1 million hours of volunteerism in schools and hospitals and homeless shelters all over the world. We even have a whole group this week in Sri Lanka working with Room to Read, which is an amazing NGO, building schools. That's just status quo for us. And then, where I think I got called out this year, and what was a difficult moment for me as a leader for sure, was, we also believe very strongly in equality. We believe in equal rights for our employees, for them to have those rights. That is, equal pay for women is critical. We've looked at every single one of our female employee salaries, and we've adjusted it against all of our male employee salaries. We actually did $3 million approximately of employee salary adjustments, so that we can say we pay women the same that we pay men. We looked at every single salary, and we also provide equal opportunity. We provide equal access to women. That's equality is our core value. We fight for that. And then that also turned into a major issue in Indiana, because there was RFRA, where all of a sudden the governor of Indiana said, well, you know what, gay rights are not something that we're going to necessarily support here in the state. They passed legislation that got a lot of our employees quite anxious and angst, because they don't want to be discriminated against. They came to me, and then I rallied other CEOs, and we saw this incredible outpouring of support for employees in this country. And that focus on equality, and I'll tell you where that comes from, which is that, when I went to business school, I was, taught the basics of Milton Friedman, the business of business is business, is shareholder value, and that's where the CEO is going to keep their focus. My approach is not shareholder value. My approach is stakeholder value. You know, for more than a dozen years, I've been going to this World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and the founder of that conference, he went to Berkeley here, and he wrote in 1972 this concept called stakeholder theory, which says that through a multi-stakeholder dialogue, that's where you build the highest level of value with your company and your organization. That is, your customers, your employees, your partners, the community, the environment. All these are critical stakeholders, and if you can manage that stakeholder value, that's going to give you the highest shareholder return. And it's evident, you can look at our 10-year chart on Yahoo Finance. It's been very good, okay? But it comes out of that philosophy. It comes not through a relentless focus on shareholders, it comes through a relentless focus on stakeholders, and employees are one of those critical stakeholders to us.
And I'm just very curious, obviously your stock performance has been very good. Do you ever find yourself in a conversation with an investor who says, Marc, you know, I just don't like all this soft stuff. Could you, lay off it a little bit? And not that I don't have an opinion on this or that, but I wish you would stop having an opinion.
I've never had that conversation with an investor. In fact, it's really become the opposite. I think that people are attracted into our company, whether it's employees, customers, investors, because we kind of represent more of, and I really only kind of recently started to understand this, but when you look at the millennial value system, okay, and you look at kind of what millennials want in terms of they want meaning in work, they want to have, an understanding that the company that they're working for is not just building products and selling products. That's what we stand for, and we attract those people into our ecosystem. And that's what we want. We know what we want to be. We know who we are. We know what value we want to add. And it's not just about, yes, we have great products. We have happy customers. Happy customers. That's critical to us. But there's so many, these businesses, these enterprises, these are the greatest platforms for change that we have in the world. They're the greatest platform for giving. They're the greatest platform to actually make a difference. That's why I love being a CEO, is because it gives you this opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I think that's a millennial idea. I think that's something you're going to see more. I think that's a shift that all CEOs are going to move into over the next 2 decades, that we're going to move away from shareholder short-term focus and into a stakeholder focus that is truly building organizations that are taking on some of the beefiest issues in the world. And you don't have to look any farther than what's going on at COP21. Business is a huge player of what's going on in Paris.
I want to ask both of you about entrepreneurship. You both are running big companies with many employees, but you both take an active interest in entrepreneurs. Why? Talk a little bit about that, Marissa, and why.
Well, I think it's that old adage, the only people who've ever changed the world is a really small group of people. And I think that all projects and all ideas start small, but can become really big, especially with the power of the internet, the power of technology and scale today. And so, it really makes sense, especially as you're looking for growth, as you're looking for innovation, to listen to those ideas and figure out how can you support them, how can you help them become the best version of themselves, whether that's inside your company or outside your company. It's something that overall is just good for the entire ecosystem.
And do you carve out a specific amount of time to meet with entrepreneurs that aren't necessarily doing business with Yahoo?
Not formally, but I certainly spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs because they're also just really fun people to meet with. They've got wild ideas and really creative ideas, and it's always fun to sort of see the world through a different lens.
Don't some of them say, you've just told me about the virtues of small companies, or small groups rather, but you run a big company. I want to keep working for this wacky organization.
Yeah, but the thing is, a large company is generally just a collection of small groups. And so, some of the best teams that we have, we've actually done a fair number of acquisitions of small companies, and we try and give them that autonomy, that accountability, and the resources they need to keep working on some of their missions and their ideas inside the company.
And Marc, I'm going to come to you in a moment on the subject of entrepreneurship, but it occurred to me, Marissa, while Marc was talking about his dialogue with Wall Street and with investors, you've had different dialogues with investors over the last year. Would you reflect on this? I assume you didn't have to do a lot of that at Google, and now you do.
Yeah, well, I think that, overall, I agree with the philosophy around stakeholders. I think it's a really powerful concept. And I think that, our dialogues with shareholders has certainly made us better, made us stronger. We have a lot of assets in the core of Yahoo, in our search business and our display business. But we also have some large Asian assets in the form of our Alibaba stake, as well as our Yahoo Japan stake. And I think it's only reasonable that our shareholders want to understand the value there. We're obviously now affecting what we call our Abaco spin-off plan that we expect will complete either in Q4 or in January. And so, I think it's important for us to say, okay, we made these investments. We were lucky to make that early investment in Alibaba. It's paid off really well for our shareholders. How do we return some of that capital and that investment?
Marissa and I are part of a dinner group, and every month we have dinner with a dozen entrepreneurs, and then we invite entrepreneurs to that. And if you ask me why I would take time to do that, it's because I love it. I love spending time with entrepreneurs. I love mentoring. I love listening. I love advising. I love investing. I love everything associated with entrepreneurship. And this dinner group kind of started with a bunch of people that I did not know. They were all kind of individuals who have now all ended up starting these companies that are turning into billion-dollar companies, which is amazing.
What's one? What's an example?
You just can go right down the list of every great company in San Francisco.
They've passed through this dinner group.
They've all passed through this dinner group and more. And the thing that's cool is that, innovation, we all talk about innovation. How do you get innovation, all these things? How do you create cultures of innovation? Innovation is pouring through these young people. If you look at what's happened within, San Francisco is only 7 square miles, you know that, Adam. And, so within a few miles of this building that we're in right now, there's been thousands of new companies that have been started just in the last several years. That is unbelievable. San Francisco is a wellspring of innovation. You go back, of course, we have gay rights, the Summer of Love. We've birthed great companies here like Wells Fargo and Levi Strauss. We heard from those CEOs. I mean, a lot of amazing things have come from San Francisco. And today, San Francisco is giving birth to more innovation, which is why you're having the conference here, right? And we're so blessed to live here and to be around all these people. And it is just, you're just bathing in it all the time. And the ideas and the creativity and the thinking that's coming out of this city is absolutely remarkable. And this is just a glorious time. And that's also why I advocate and I say to these entrepreneurs, look, this is an amazing time. We have to use this time also in a positive way. Let's focus on our K through 12 schools here. Let's focus on our hospitals. Let's focus on our homeless shelters. Let's bring it to Oakland, which is not a hugely prosperous part of San Francisco, which is inextricably connected through our Bay Bridge and our BART tunnels. But let's bring the whole Bay Area up through this time of innovation. And that's a key message for us.
And I'll just say, because Marc hasn't said it, that he has put his money where his mouth is on these subjects, quite a bit of money in the Bay Area. Questions from you all? Yes, right here, please. Just identify yourself for Marc and Marissa.
Kathy Bloomgarden, Reuter Finn. For you, Marissa, you've obviously taken Yahoo on a new path toward better and stronger growth. But how do you keep people's patience? You've branded the Mavens as one example, but how do you keep people, sort of inspire them to hang on while you do what's necessary, and it takes time to do that?
Sure. So one of the things that you referenced is we have really set our sights on mobile, video, native, and social. And we made that sort of the acronym for the Mavens because we think that new future I referred to, that's what it's ultimately going to be built on. Yahoo's primarily an advertising company, and we think those are the areas of digital advertising that are really growing and that we ultimately want to be focused on. In terms of how do you keep people's patience, it's always a challenge. But I think that innovation is one of the things that keeps people going. That idea that there's something new to work on, there's a new customer need, there's a new idea to work on all the time. And it might be a feature coming into an old and established product. It might be a new product altogether. We've been in fantasy football for I think now 16 or 17 seasons, and now there's this whole uprising around daily fantasy and how do you take that and make it a daily game, and it's a whole new frontier, and so there's always new and exciting things that come up. And when you look at, for example, all the different fields of artificial intelligence and some of the machine learning that's happening, and how do you apply that to search? How do you apply that to Yahoo Mail? There's just so many new ideas to work on. I think that's really where the lifeblood of the company comes from, and the energy really comes from.
Right up front here, please. You win.
Right, thank you. My name is Oberoi. I'm from India. I run an e-commerce company. So my question to you, sir, is that you built a great company and we're all proud of you for doing that. But do you not at times now, today, feel a little constrained because of the name of your company, which is Salesforce, and it's not Apple or Mango or something like that?
Well, it is interesting because people give me naming advice all the time. And the thing about that is that people know that we're the #1 largest CRM vendor in the world.
CRM,
customer relationship management, sorry for the acronym.
No, that's okay.
Also our stock ticker. And we will be the 4th largest software company in the world next year. We have about 20,000 employees. So people say, okay, well, you're doing sales, you're doing service, you're doing marketing. We're the largest marketing company in the world. You're doing analytics, you're doing IoT, you're doing application development across all platforms. Why can't you come up with a better name than Salesforce? And I'm like, well, it's the best I got. So you have ideas? My email is co@Salesforce. I'm happy to take all comers. And but so far it's working, actually. So
Let me re-ask the question a slightly different way, Marc. How likely is it that you will ever change the name of Salesforce.com?
I think it's pretty unlikely. Ultimately, it's become a brand that has values associated with it that are beyond our products. And I think that's super important for us as an organization. As I said, that's where I live. I live in those values. I know that if I could rewind the clock 17 years, would I have done it differently? No, because we built our backs on Salesforce automation. I closed my quarter on my phone on Friday, using my phone. That was awesome. That's a customer service. Then we entered that. All these other areas we've entered. If we had became marketing force, service force, analytics force, IoT force, whatever. Our conference that we have just had our conference in San Francisco. It's a little bit larger than this one. Not that I'm competitive, but we had 175,000 people come here, 10 million online. It's the largest software conference in the world, and ideas, and we talk about everything from women's leadership to mindfulness to these areas. We could call our company Dreamforce. But ultimately, I think that it's working, and I think that if it wasn't working or I got into a situation of distress, I'll be a lot more receptive, I guess, to new ideas.
You're saying it's not constraining you.
Well, we run this thing called ideas.salesforce.com. We do this for a lot of companies where we let our customers come and give us and that's an active discussion on our communities. We advocate to our customers that they build communities with their customers and partners, that it's an intricate part of connecting to employees. Home Depot has transformed their company and their same store sales and traffic by building community. Community is, and one of the most active topics on our communities is this naming thing, which is people are constantly debating, well, why did that asshole call it Salesforce? Is he so stupid? And I'm like, well, I just don't know what else to call it.
So this is a variation of as long as they spell your name right, they can. As long as they're talking about you, it's good, right?
I hope so.
We have a question over here, please.
PB Conan 24/7. So a year back, unicorns were all the rage, and now in the last few weeks, Adam himself has written a few pieces on unicorns, but it's been more negative and so on. A lot of the blogs nowadays talk about the time comparison of 2015 looking like 99, and probably the latter half of 99. What are your views on the market as well as what's going on in the valuations of private companies?
I'll ask you each to give a short answer. Marissa?
I think that overall it's a good sign that there's so many businesses that are thriving. I think it feels very different than 1999 because a lot of these companies really do have business models that work. I also think that, over the past year, and especially towards the end of the summer, there was a pretty major market correction. So one of the things that you are seeing is a lot of these unicorns, have valuations that were set earlier this year. Because there isn't a market to check against, it basically means that, they've experienced a similar market correction, just hasn't really happened on paper. And so they're still great companies, but they've just experienced the same market correction that a lot of us have.
These are the billion-dollar private companies we're talking about. Marc, your shortest answer ever, please.
Well, I'll tell you the same answer I give these entrepreneurs, which is they're making a huge mistake. They are waiting too long to go public. And because they're waiting too long to go public, they're running up their valuations into areas that may or may not be unsustainable, because it's very hard once they go public to then have kind of this same valuation. You see, I can give you a number of examples. You all know them. I'm not going to go through and embarrass these guys because they're all friends of mine, but they're staying private too long. They're raising too much money. And I'll tell you why. Public markets are super great for CEOs, because for anyone here who's a CEO of a public company, you have to answer to the public market. You have to listen, you have to pay attention. Somebody says to you, what about your name? I have to take it seriously, because I'm a public company, and I have governance. I have all the things that are important about being a public company, and these things, I think these entrepreneurs are missing out on something absolutely critical in building great companies. I think that you certainly can build a great company as a private company. There's lots of examples, but I think that the public experience is what's missing for these entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are making big mistakes, getting drawn in by private equity and venture capitalists to take these huge amounts of monies at these huge valuations. They cash out early, they buy these big penthouses in the sky, and then all of a sudden they're trapped. They can't go public, okay, because their last valuation would be higher than their public valuation. You do not want to get to that point, and yet they're all getting to that point. So will that eventually have to get rationalized? Maybe, I don't know, because this part of the business actually is unprecedented. So it's not about the unicorns and all this kind of stuff. That's all wonderful. The real issue is they are doing a huge disservice, I think, to their shareholders. And I look at companies, I think a great example is Fitbit. This is a company that is a great company. Adam and I are both wearing Fitbits, okay?
And only you're an investor, I'm not.
I'm an investor. It's a great CEO. He took his company public this year. He got it up, to a very significant revenue level, but he got out, and that is transforming his company. That transformed him as a leader. Anyone who's a public company CEO, here's two right here, we can tell you it's a transformational experience. Agreed?
Marissa?
To be a public company CEO.
Marissa, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
The good and the bad,
I just want to say to both of you, thank you so much for sharing your experience
Thank you very much.
with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.